So I'm here with not only a London Food Bank staple, but a London community staple as well. This is Jim Cressman. Jim, we were just talking. When did you start at the food bank?
March 2017. Mike at the food bank looked that up just before I came over today.
Yeah.
It seems like more than that long ago, but...
Well, I don't know how we were lucky enough to land you. I do know that you wrote for the sports reporter for London Free Press, correct?
36 years.
36 years. This has been a hard year for you.
Yeah.
For many watching 369 York Street get torn down.
Oh, yeah, for sure. A lot of great memories in that building.
For sure. I did too. I mean, I worked at Central Fire Hall for
right
25
across
years, right across the street. So we had lots of great contacts there.
I still remember the night we had, it turned out it was the city's heating grates, the steam. Steam was coming up, and somebody thought it was a fire, and they pulled the fire alarm, and some of the first firefighters to just ran across the street, and then the trucks came. That was
I remember
probably the quickest response time of any.
Yeah. So I was fire department for almost 30 years, but you were at the Free Press longer. Now, it's true that you're an umpire, referee for minor league baseball.
Well, I'd refereed hockey for a number of years, but I packed that in basically after I'd started at the Free Press because I'd be covering a junior B game one night and I'd be refereeing the same two teams 2 nights later, so it was a bit of a conflict. But I umpired baseball for 60 years, and actually last July I worked last game I worked last July. I decided. Yeah. Some of those line drives when I was on the bases in the middle of the infield were I wasn't able to get out of the way as much, and they were going by the nose, and I thought I better walk off the field under my own steam before.
So there were some concussions that went with that, weren't there?
Oh yeah, when you work the plate, you're taking foul balls and stuff like that, and I've had a few other situations too since I've had my first few where I get some balance issues and stuff like that, and and I'm sure you did on the job yourself, and also you've probably seen so many on the job as well. So
that's right. Yeah. So, but do I have it right? Did you ump at the Olympics?
1988 in Seoul.
Seoul. Yeah. So how did you get selected for that?
Baseball Canada, because Canada was participating in the Olympics that year. They were asked to send an umpire. And the supervisor of umpires for Baseball Canada, Dick Willis, who's now passed, I kind of heard through the grapevine that I was going to be going to Australia to umpire the World Juniors that year. And when I got the phone call, I was at the Free Press, and he called me and he said, "Are you sitting down?" And and like any good umpire, I lied. I said yes. I was actually standing up. But anyway, and he said, "You're going to Seoul." And I could have swore I thought I heard him say Sydney, Australia, and I went, "Oh," and then I went, "Oh," and it was at first I was kind of a disappointment because I thought, "Oh, going to Australia would be awesome." Then I realized, "Oh my God, I'm going to the Olympics! Like that's the biggest sporting event in the world," and so it was like, "Whoa!"
Was what of all the sporting stuff that you've done over all these decades? Is that the highlight?
Well, there's a few like that, definitely for umpiring wise. I did the '98 Worlds in Italy. That was great, just to be in Italy for 2 weeks, to travel around there, and I learned so much about Italian food. I didn't realize that every region was totally different in food. I know you've traveled to Italy, and but the Olympics, yes, because it's, as I say, it's the greatest sporting spectacle in the world, and as an official, we got to go to other events for free. So I would every night. The games. The nice thing about it, the baseball games were at 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. So everything at night we could go to. As long as there was a seat, we could go and watch all these other events. So I took full advantage of that. And then afterwards, being in Korea in Seoul was a great experience too. But we think we have traffic jams here. Holy mackerel, just nuts. But and most of the intersections, they had underground passageways because the roads were just so wide and so much traffic. But after that, I booked a trip to go to Hong Kong and then into China for 10 days. And that was a great, and that was a great experience walking on the Great Wall. And I got to see panda bears at the zoo. So,
So I remember a number of years ago, the Grand Theatre approached us and said, "We want to do something with the food bank." And what it worked out was really they decided to do their December, usually their Christmas feature, which could be Ebenezer Scrooge, Christmas Carol, or Mary Poppins. It was a number of different things. But I do remember we agreed to that. We were working together on it, and it was great. And I remember I went there for the opening night, and I looked up, and there was you. You were there, and you have volunteered at the Grand Theatre. Now, I've just heard today.
I've volunteered money. I've just been a donor and a season ticket. I've never volunteered.
I thought I've seen you there guiding people to seats. You just know what you're doing.
Yeah, some people, if they're lost and the ushers are busy, I'll say, oh, you're over there or something like that. But yeah.
Now, and then I just saw today on Facebook that you're on the board of the Blythe Festival.
Yeah, just this year.
Did that just start?
Yeah, I had a friend from back. We'd gone to a leadership camp. Believe it or not, I went to a leadership camp. Yeah, some people would doubt that. When I was 18 years old, and Doug Elliott from Seaforth, I got to know him, and he's been on the board for years. He's been president like 2 or 3 times. And he kept bugging me. He said, come on, you got to join the board. And I just thought, no, because I've just been so busy with other stuff that I've been doing with the umpiring and in work and all that stuff. And I thought, Blythe, that's a bit of a hike. And I just kind of kept putting it off. And then finally I thought, well, you know what? That might be fun. They were coming into their 50th season this year. And I phoned them up. I said, you know what, Doug, I think I'm ready. So and it's been, so far, it's been a great, I've only been on for, it'll be coming up close to a year, but it's been a great experience. I ended up getting on the fundraising committee. Carol Mitchell, who used to be a member of MPP for 10, 12 years from the Clinton Goderich area. She heads up the fundraising committee. And the first board meeting, when she spoke about the fundraising committee, I went, I want to be on your committee. Yeah, she's a wild lady, but and Gil Garrett is just so energetic. He has done 10 years. This is his 10th year as the artistic director, and he's just done a marvelous job. He actually saved it. It was probably going to go under when Gil came in, and of course Blythe is the only professional theater company in Canada that does strictly all Canadian productions, new play work. In fact, it hasn't been released yet, so I'll give you a scoop. Emma Donahue approached Gil about she wants to write a play for Blythe rather than Blythe reaching out to somebody. She said, because she goes up there and sees stuff. Yeah. And so she has now been commissioned to do a play for 2025. Wow. So she said I ran into her a few weeks ago. She says, I better get down to Wortley Village and get out of there at one of those coffee shops and get writing.
No, that's great.
So that'll just be tremendous to have Emma have something on stage for us up there. So we're just opening, as I say, we're just opening up our 50th season with the farm show, which was the original show that opened the Blythe Festival 50 years ago. Wow. It's kind of been reworked a little bit to bring it up to date. So,
So how did you end up at the food bank? I don't know that story.
Well, I retired in December of 2011, and I just became a couch potato, like a lot of retirees do. And I was still going to theater and still umpiring baseball and stuff like that. And then I don't know whether it was I might have seen Jane on TV on a commercial. I think because I think it was Christmas, the usual where it snows and everything else. And I thought, I wonder if the food bank needs volunteers. So I went on the webpage and filled out the form, and they just were looking it up today. It was March of 2017 that I had signed up and worked my first shift, and I've never looked back. I've just enjoyed it so much.
We'll get into that in a sec, but where does that volunteer spirit come from you? It just seems to me you sign up. And it's not about the pay. It's not about that kind of stuff. You just see something and you get involved. Where's that come from? Was it your parents or was it your upbringing? What was it?
Well, my dad. My mother was involved at the Dearness Home. She was a hairdresser. I don't think they call them that anymore. But she was a hairdresser professionally. But she'd volunteer up at the Dearness Home, and I think the Dearness Home gave her like $2 a haircut or something. But she never took the money, so she did that. My dad was involved with the Air Force Association for years and years. He was actually national president for a couple of years. So, of course, that was all volunteer stuff. And then my dad, as he got older, he started volunteering over at Parkwood Hospital with the vets, because he was a vet of World War II. He'd been a bomb aimer on Lancaster. And so I guess it just came from that. But also, too, I think just... when I first started umpiring, you didn't. It was almost like a volunteer position. You hardly got any money for it way back then when I was 13, 14 years old. But I think it's just a sense of community too. You hear so much about volunteers in the city of London and the work they do, the great work that they do. Yeah. And as I say, I did a little digging into the food bank and was reading.
You didn't see my pictures.
No, I know. I saw Jane's. Yeah, I saw a much younger Jane Roy. She always keeps saying she's got to get that Christmas.
No, none
Christmas
of us wanted to get rid of that.
Oh, that's a great.
The story behind that is that
that.
there are two stories.
Yeah.
Peter Garland's daughter was doing this thing, so we went up to Stouffville, and it was winter time. There was no snow.
It was green.
It was green, and all these Christmas trees because it was a tree farm. So they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, and then all of a sudden it just snowed. Buckets of snow. It was unbelievable. So they quickly rushed out with Jane. They just had her rushing between the trees. And the next year Peter had her come and do one with me. So I was a firefighter at number 4 station on Colburn Street. So I was the little girls bringing up food in a wagon, and I'm supposed to get it from her and take her inside and meet the firefighters, so on and so forth, and thank her for the donation. So it was fine. Jane's commercial was a hit immediately, just immediately, because she's so great. Mine did okay, but the problem was I had hair then. So they couldn't keep playing it year after year because nobody would have recognized
me. And of course, Jane hasn't changed one bit. Well, maybe a little gray.
No, that's right. But her commercial is epic. So every year when somebody says, maybe we should do something different, Jane says, yeah, let's do that. Peter Garland says, no way. That's a great one. And it is.
Because it's snowing. You could see the big,
but it's her spirit
face.
just alive to it.
I know. Yeah, no, that's a great. And as I say, and I know I've known Peter for years because we worked in the same building at 369 York Street.
And now you're seeing him at the food bank.
I know. And so I figured, well, if the food bank is good enough for Peter to do those commercials, then hey, and as I say, I just didn't want to be a couch potato. I've never been a big one for soap operas, so I thought, well, and so I got lucky. I want to say that I got lucky too because it's a great team. The staff, the other volunteers. We have fun. It's really a good atmosphere in there.
I want to dig into that in a bit. But when you first came and you walked into the food bank, how was that first month or first few times volunteering? Did it trouble you? Did you see, I suppose you saw good and bad, but how did it strike you?
Well, for the first couple of months or so when you're there, you're working out the back in the warehouse. Yeah. So you're not really seeing the clients. Yeah. Like you're putting together the hampers, you're sorting, that sort of stuff. Well, then I got moved into where I was bringing the hampers out to the clients when we used to bring them into that middle the waiting room area, and that I used to bring the hampers there. So you got to see the clients. You had a little bit of interaction with them, and you got, oh my goodness, like you could just see the look of stress on a lot of their faces. And one day I always remember this. This was interesting. This is after I'd been there for 2 or 3 years, but it was pre-COVID. There was a gentleman, and he was nicely dressed and everything else, and he was at the desk registering, and he turned to me and he says, "I'm really embarrassed to be here." I said, "No, sir, you shouldn't." He says, "Well," he says, "I have a full-time job, but," he says, "I worked for a company that's inside, it was one of the car plants, Ingersoll Woodstock, I forget which one it was, that was on strike. And his company was inside the gates, inside the fence. Well, everything was locked down. So they couldn't go into work. So he wasn't getting paid, and he had 3 or 4 kids. And he says, right now, he says, I just can't make ends meet. Yeah. And I said, "Sir, this is why we're here." I said, "Hopefully we don't see you again, but I said, if you ever need it." And so I've learned pretty quickly not to be judgmental. And now with the war in Ukraine, well, it's not a war, it's an invasion. I've talked to more young Ukrainians that are over here, and they're worried about their family back there. And then we have the various ethnic groups, the religious groups. Yeah. One of the really, before I forget to say it, one of the really neat things, this just happened last week, that this lady, I could tell she was with, I didn't ask what country or what religious group, but she was one religious group, and another lady couldn't speak English, but they could speak kind of the same language. Yeah. They were totally different ends of the spectrum for religion and countries, and their countries are probably warring right now. And she said, I'm gonna translate for her. I said, that is awesome. Yeah. So as she was leaving, I thanked her for
in English.
And I said to her, I said, what you did was just beautiful. I said, I wish the world could be like you too.
Yeah.
And she says, I do too. And I thought, it's so good that when they can come to our country and realize that, hey, they don't have to be bitter enemies anymore.
Yeah. Jim, it's my favorite part of the food bank is what you've just described. Like we now have a database of over 3,000 volunteers, right? Yeah. That's people that come to the food bank off and on, plus another 1,000 that are out there in community helping in food drives and firefighters, those kind of things. But it's that in a world in which it seems like everybody has an opinion, that's not a bad thing. People should all have opinions, but it then becomes contentious, and you really see it in things like politics and other things.
Well, you experienced that.
That's right. But you go down there and you see all of these people, and they're all different. There's people from the LGBTQ community. They're working with people who are Syrian refugees. They're working with somebody who are working for a company.
We have a Russian that volunteers.
That's right. So I mean, I look at it all and I figure that to me is the democracy that I've always believed in. And the reason why it doesn't come apart, there's lots of people there with strong opinions, probably including me. The reason why it doesn't come apart is that that's not why they're there.
No, and we never discuss politics.
That's right.
We never get into it.
And it just, it's been 38 years for Jane and I, and we just have not seen that taking place there at all. You are kind of a guy that's on fire all the time. That's kind of how I see you. You're kind of an epic volunteer at the food bank. You're just out there. You can be very verbose. You can be reflective. You really care about people.
Sometimes too verbose, I'm told.
That's just the thing, though. I know others down there that are very quiet and hardly say anything. But when someone like you comes in there and you do bring energy to a room, it's a great thing.
Thanks.
But you respect the different ways that people are. They also respect that with you. But the point is, at the end of the day, you just got so much done with all of these other people.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the beauty of it. And I think that it'd be one thing to come there and be kind of a fly in the wall and not say much about anything. It's another thing to come there and be somebody who's just, you've got energy, you want to help your community, and you find there aren't really too many guardrails here, except your own self-imposed ones, where you try to be respectful of other people. But you've done that, and I think that that's a real accomplishment, because the food bank is such an open place. It would be very easy for anybody to come in and just do whatever, but somebody like you who cares for your community, you come in and you find your place, and it works, and there's hundreds of other people doing the same thing.
As the staff likes to say, the volunteers run the show. Well, Mike, who's in charge of the produce side of things, and on Friday afternoons I work produce with Eric, and Mike has a board, and Eric and I kind of go, Mike will come out and say, this, we go, okay, and then we just do whatever we want. It might say 4 potatoes, we're putting an 8, jeez, I hope Mike doesn't see this. He knows anyway, but we'll always put extra in, because I figure, you know what, they need it, and if we got tons of potatoes or tons of carrots, what's an extra couple of carrots?
I spent 27 years there as a volunteer, right, as the director, and I remember at the very beginning when we first got going, nobody had ever heard of a food bank. This is 38 years ago, right? So nobody had heard of a food bank, but they knew that there were problems within London. The London Free Press and the firefighters, and they really got involved, and we had the first food drive, and it was great. But I remember as it began to grow and lots of attention was coming in, and other food banks, we were one of the charter members of the original Ontario Food Bank Association. We were one of the charter members of the Canadian Food Bank Association. They met here in London at University of Western Ontario back then to have one of our foundational meetings. So we'd been around a long time, but we watched as they grew that they began hiring more and more staff, people who knew what they were doing. And our belief, especially for me because I was a volunteer, was that, there are so many Londoners that want in. Up until then, I think there were people that wanted to get involved in those kind of things, but, it was kind of difficult. But they got in. But I remember Jane early on saying, we need to give them responsibility, supervising responsibility. So it's not just the staff having to watch over everything, that we trust the volunteers to take on this particular task. And it might be every week as they come in or whatever. And that's just the way that it's worked out. So, we have 9 staff now, I think, but other food banks are a size of 25 and 30. Right?
Yeah, that blows my mind when I hear that, because I'm thinking how much money is going.
Yes, and those we know all of those food banks, and they do good work.
Yeah,
but they always look at London and figure, we were just kind of waiting for you guys to implode at some time. And we've been told that your philosophy of allowing average people to come in and kind of direct how that operation is going to help other people. At some point, they felt that was going to collapse, and it never has. And now when I look at it, and a guy like Mike Bloxham, just like you were saying, he comes along and says, okay, here it is, then you get that. No, we'll do this instead. It's great, because it allows for that variety, kind of a spontaneous feeling down there. But you feel that, I'm sure.
But I think you just hit the nail on the head, that the fact that London, no matter what the event is, when they put out the call for volunteers, look, when we get the Ontario Summer Games, the Canada Summer Games, they have twice as many as they need, but they always try to find a spot for them, because they don't want to say no, sorry, because then maybe next time they won't get that many volunteers. So it doesn't matter what the event is going on in London, the volunteers just come pouring out, because they just want to help their city. And a good example, you'll appreciate this story. A friend of mine, Steve Cochran, who just he retired 2 years ago. He was retired as a sergeant of the London Police Service, and he was 34 years. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but he says, Jim, you're always talking about the food bank, and you're just so enthusiastic about it. He said, I want to volunteer. I said, Steve, that's awesome, because he's got a little bit of time on his hands and that sort of thing. And so we got talking, and I told him how to fill out the form. And I said, but you know what? Because they're in their car, they're on their computers all the time. I know they're always looking for the intake computer operators, and I thought he would be perfect on that, and the way he can deal with people because of the street smarts and that sort of stuff. So I brought him in to meet Marianne. Well, Marianne decided right away, you're going to start on the computers. He had some training sessions and that sort of stuff, but he interacts with the people. But it was so funny. I said to Steve, I said, one of the co-directors is a former firefighter. And he goes, ooh, cops and firefighters. And I said, yeah, I know. You guys are always whining about them polishing their boats, and they're always saying you guys spending all that time in Tim Hortons. But I know some of his best friends have been firefighters too, captains and things like that. So, and he's really enjoying it. And he said to me about 3 weeks, a month ago, he says, I know a lot of people who should be in here volunteering just to see this.
Yeah, that worked. Do you have a favorite role at the food bank?
I enjoy the produce thing, because it's a hands-on that I'm really, especially when we got a lot of produce.
There's a lot these days.
Well, that's the best thing. Like back when I first started, well, you would know, there was no fresh produce. And now the grocery stores have finally got the idea that we shouldn't be throwing this stuff out, and they don't. Farmers are donating mushrooms, Hemans with their strawberries.
Average citizens with their backyard.
They're growing. That's a great thing too. And so that, to me, I love doing the produce, because I'm thinking, God, that's why I want to give extra, because I know they need that good nourishment, that sort of thing. But on every other Thursday afternoon, I do greeting, where we bring them in take them to a computer station to register. And I just enjoy that part, because it gives me a chance to do a little interaction with the clients as they come in.
Peter Garland's funny, because he's London's major morning radio guy, right? For decades. It was awesome. But he sits there at the food bank, and he's just like a street cop.
I know.
Directing people this way and that way.
I get to replace him, so it's always fun when we see each other. So
would be great.
He says, "Oh, good, I get to go home now." And I said, "No, it's only 20 after 12. You got 10 more minutes." On my
that's good.
Peter's been great. I just want to say too.
Well, he's for a whole generation of people, he was in many ways London.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, he was.
He was.
Yeah.
So especially when those people come in and they
Yeah.
see Peter there, and he's
Yeah.
just so enigmatic and
Oh,
nice
yeah.
and calm.
Oh,
That's
well.
one of the beautiful things. Do you
Yeah.
have a favorite moment or a favorite time that happened to you in the years that you've been at the food bank? Something that's more memorable than the others?
Because I think it impacted me the most. It was the first time I met a young Ukrainian, and I could just I still remember him. He looked about 19 or 20, and he had blonde hair, but I wasn't saying right off the bat until he spoke, and I said, are you just here new in Canada? He said, yes, I just arrived 2 days ago from Ukraine. And I went, oh, and I said, do you have family back home? And just the look on his eyes, and when he said yes, it was like, oh my God, like now we're actually, even though we're not over there experiencing firsthand, that was the closeness of touching it. And that actually made me one day, or not one day, but for a few days, when the Ukrainian Center just up the street, or just up Adelaide, was packing all the medical supplies and all that sort of stuff to send over, I thought, I want to go in there and help. And so this isn't really food bank, but it's because of the food bank. There was a guy in there. He was talking, and he hadn't heard from his brother for 3 days, and he was worried because he said every day he would phone me, and he just the look in his eyes, it was like, I don't think he's alive anymore. And I just started to cry. But that was all because of my connection with the food bank that I experienced that moment. And I'm sure you've gone through that too with all your trips and of seeing the famine in the world. And
I must say though, Jim, that Ukrainian moment, I remember when it happened, we're all glued to the TV. I can't believe this is happening. But I remember Jane and I sitting down and say, let's find something that can help average Londoners do something about it, rather than just, pray or be discouraged or try to be friendly to somebody that comes over. So we decided to just, have a food drive that would help and give a portion of our food to it. We went up the street, met with the Ukrainian Association. But I remember I put that on the website, and then we interviewed one of the Ukrainian families on Facebook. And the food just came pouring in, and it was especially marked for those people. And I loved that moment. It was great. But what I liked about it was the food bank became the vehicle for people who were really caring and wanted to help and didn't know how to do it, even half a world away. But they do it now. We just finished a food drive where they gave more than last year, right? The Curb Hunger food drive. I still think the food bank is that opportunity, that kind of lever that can take somebody who's concerned about people that are hungry or low income, and they can find a way to just get involved in doing it. But I think the Ukrainian thing for me was one of the highlights as well, because not because of anything Jane and I did, or even Ukrainian Association. We just put it on Facebook, and it's just like, remember the old chia pets? Put water on them, all this hair grows. I tried it. It doesn't work on me. But it's just what it was like. All of a sudden, it just took off. Londoners.
Well, again, it's Londoners.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Londoners. Well, look at the outpouring for our Muslim family too. Like, it was just like it was one community. Like it's just. I was going to. I know what it was. I've learned so much too about our community through the food bank, that because the food bank deals, and I don't think a lot of people realize how many other agencies you guys deal with. I had Julia Webb, whose husband Jake Levesque, who was a great musician in town. He passed away recently with Parkinson's. He has all this medication and stuff like that. And Julia, who had been a teacher for years up at Banning, she did drama. She reached out to me and said, "Can the food bank use any of this?" And I said, "We can't." But I said, I know of, I said, I've heard of, because I've asked, I've seen stuff in there. Oh, we send this to this, we send this to that. So I got a hold of Marianne of the food bank and said, Julia's got all this stuff. And she said, okay, we'll reach out. I think it's the Inner Community Health Center. Yeah. They've reached out to them. There's a couple other places they reached out for. And Julia's got like 5 big boxes just waiting now to be picked up and delivered. Yeah. So it's through that, learning about that stuff, that again, here's one Londoner that's donating all that stuff, and I wouldn't have known about it if I hadn't have been volunteering at the food bank.
Yeah, I think really Jane and I really see the food bank as, we're not really dealing with poverty. We're dealing with hunger issues or whatever it is, but we know that the groups that we're helping dozens of groups now, especially since the pandemic. But we realize that if somebody needs English as a second language, if somebody needs counseling in some way, budgeting, housing, whatever it is, those groups are all doing that stuff, like the Inter-Community Health Center, helping people low income, all that kind of stuff. But our job, you would think, is just to make sure that the food gets in that direction and helps. And I think that is really true. And London's been very generous at donating to that. But the other key thing is average people, like let's say you're a grade 5 and you're sitting there and you don't get a chance to go to a lot of those places because specific skills are required to deal with somebody with a mental health issue or whatever. But if somebody who's in grade 5 can tell the difference between a box of macaroni and a head of lettuce. Right? So you see all these kids down there that are working with their parents or with their teachers. And I just realized, what makes the food bank matter is it's the entrance portal into those deeper kind of issues. And, when you've got 3,000 volunteers, as we do at the food bank, I think it shows me, I think, that they do want in. But many of them have now moved on to even more strident kind of things that they have to do, helping the homeless, things that are really difficult, right? They've done it, but the entrance came through the food bank. I love that the food bank becomes that portal, that people, they grow in their understanding and get involved in other things.
Well, I know you don't like to toot your own horn, but it just made me think of this, what you guys were doing with the convention center, sending the hot meals down to the people living down by the river. Like that, people wouldn't even know about that, and that's just like...
That pandemic, amazing. Jim, when it happened, we met with community leaders, and they said, "Is the food bank closing?" And we said, "No, we don't think so." And they said, "Please don't," because others have told them. But you guys are carrying the main boat.
We found a way to keep going.
We did, but it was Michelle Baldwin, who at that point was at Pillar, phoned RBC place, and they were saying, "Look, we're going to have to close down. There's no conventions or anything. We wish we could find a way to help." So she said, "Phone Glenn Pearson." So she phoned. This is Laurie De Silva, the head of RBC place, who's now just retired. She phoned here. It was a Saturday morning, and Brian just happened to be here. Brian Ratcliffe, who's one of our staffers since '92. He and Jane and I were talking about, okay, how do we organize around this thing, around the pandemic? And so when they said that they have an industrial kitchen, they've got these chefs and they want to do all this stuff, we'd also been hearing from groups that they really needed food. So we just put together, within 10 minutes in our living room, the homeless lunch program. So the food bank paid for it, which is awesome. That's Londoners that paid for it, their generosity, right? We paid for it, RBC put it all together. And now how do you get it out to the people? So the next thing you know, 519 Pursuit, who's the group that goes out and visits the people in the encampments. But then the London Bicycle Club came, and they would come into RBC Place under the ground, and they would pick up all the lunches, and then out they'd go on their bikes and deliver it to Boys and Girls Club or all those. Like it happened within a week.
Wow.
And we spent over $1 million in that first year just on that food because things were so closed down. But my point was, it took 10 minutes to put it together. And everybody showed up and just did it. It's the most remarkable thing. But I think you see this too. But you see these things happening all the time in community, and you just realize, I just wish our leaders could get this.
I know.
That we know how to cooperate. We do have our differences as people and as citizens, but we know where the priorities lie, and we wish to be involved. And we just got to hope that someday our policymakers and political leaders can find that kind of collaboration.
What was interesting about that is because I should say that there are perks to being a volunteer. You get nice T-shirt, nice free T-shirt. You get a really nice name tag.
That's good.
And one Christmas, we got these really great mittens. And we usually have a barbecue. Volunteer barbecue every June, and before Christmas we always have the volunteer big meal up at Western Fair, which is outstanding. But because of COVID, we couldn't do that. But so we got to take home the exact same meals that was going down
to the homeless
lunch program. We got to take those home, and I thought, that is great. That was our Christmas meal, even though we couldn't get together to do it. It was,
Jim, you mean a lot to us, and I mean that. I mean, you're a spark plug, you're a bright light, and But I look at you as just emblematic of what the food bank is and what's done. And, you know, people like the staff there, people like Marianne or Mike Bloxham, who you were talking about, who you don't listen to and just go off and do your own thing.
I'm going to pay for this.
But I just think you kind of represent the heart and soul of what community is.
But you know where a lot of that energy comes from too? And we don't see as much of you as we see of Jane, but Jane's energy, because you guys, you're volunteering too. And it's just like, and you started it. And I always remember where you've said, we thought it might be 10 years. Mm-hmm. Well, it's now what, 30, I think you just
38.
38 years. Yeah. And there's no end in sight. And if people like you weren't around doing this, a lot of people would be starving every night. And
that might be true. I think my role, to be honest, is Jane and I were always out in the community. We were hardly ever at the food bank, as you know. Yeah. Then the pandemic came and we had to split our responsibilities. So she went down to the food bank to handle that. And now my job was the community. So I do think I can network and bring certain people together. But
London Business Cares is a perfect example. But anyway, sorry.
But Jane has got the hard part, and so do you. Like, I go around to these different places and they're giving checks to the food bank. Right? Yeah. Or they're coming in and wanting to volunteer, whatever it is. People like you and Jane have to sit down there where all the crucible of all the pain is for the people that are coming and needing help. And I think Jane has that kind of personality. It's just kind of, everybody's happy to see her. She's a ray of sunshine. Oh, yeah. She knows how to put people in different positions. I don't have that gift or talent. But I think Jane has been amazing. But she has told me that people like you and Peter Garland and others being down there who use your personalities to lighten the day for people, that means a lot to her, because I know it's a heavy load down there.
Yeah, well, some Friday afternoons we wish Jane wasn't around. She likes
you could do stuff?
Well, she likes to organize Friday afternoon sports games. And it's like, Jane, we're really busy. Friday's really busy. But we gotta play a game.
Yeah, so she'll bring out some hockey sticks.
Yeah, I know.
That's just
we're shooting oranges around.
I understand. Jim, thank you. Thank you for all you've done for the food bank. Congratulations on Blythe Festival as well.
Thank you, but thank you to you and Jane too for doing what you guys have done for this city as well.
Couldn't be done if you weren't there. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Glenn.